So what we're going to talk about today is these repeating organizations of classes or objects and the way they interact. Because there's a lot of core type solution things, different types of objects with the way they work together and hook together that come up over and over again. The variances will be a little different depending upon your domain. There's the common tricks, the techniques that you can use to solve it. And it's really when you go from becoming beginning mediocre object-oriented designer to really an advanced object-oriented designer, you know these things. And it's based upon the design patterns element of reusable object-oriented software. These are the famous Gang of Four. We don't mean the Gang of Four from China, even though we did put these Gang of Four on trial at Uppsala, and the verdict was already predicted, just like the Gang of Four in China. But it was published in 1995. And so this is what we're going to cover. Basically, the overall goals that I have here is the fact that I want you to understand what patterns are and why they're important. I want you to recognize all of the design patterns, all 23, including a couple others I'm going to throw at you. We're not going to have time. Normally when I have 4 days, and we can break up into working groups as we do it, and we go a lot slower, and I cover 6 or 7 patterns a day, and then I force you to use them, and we break up into groups, and you can do design sessions and write pseudocode or UML or whatever to apply these. We can't really do that. We're not going to cover that, nor do that, but I will show you how to learn new patterns when you need them, and I'll give you the big picture and with some details, and then of course you'll know where to go when you have these kind of problems. You'll know how to find more information. It's impossible, of course, with 6 hours to know everything you need to know about patterns, but at least you'll know the core stuff of what's going on, and especially with the 23 design patterns from the Gang of Four. And normally when I do this, I do all of these. We do reading groups, we do exercises. Well, those are, as you can see, kind of italicized out. What we're doing is I'll have to focus on the presentation and answer questions, since this is a really compressed one-day course. So we'll do it. That's the way we'll have to do it. I would like to point out that Java came out shortly after the Design Patterns book came out. And a lot of the people that were involved with it were obviously, they knew a lot of these patterns. And especially a lot of when Java first was coming out, they were also highly influenced by Smalltalk. And you see a lot of these common patterns coming up over and over again. And in fact, they even use the name of the pattern sometimes with their classes or interfaces. For example, you see in Java that you have an iterator interface. Well, that's a design pattern, iterator, and so they added that as the interface as part of the language. They use the composite. They have the component model for their GUIs. You see that in Smalltalk too. And in fact, it's very interesting. When we have more time, what we do is a little bit of pattern safari. Let's delve into some of these different libraries and see the fact that we can see these patterns and what works and what doesn't work through there. I'll show you a little bit about that. One thing that you'll notice is when you're using patterns, depending upon the language you're using, C++, C#, or Java, it really affects how the design patterns are implemented. Let me ask this question. How many people here are doing C++ development? Quite a few, okay. You'll have no problems with Java. I noticed C++ people can read Java real easy. Sometimes it's harder the other way around because of the pointers and things like that. But the examples I have are in Java, but if the Gang of Four has the implementations in C++. But for example, when you're doing C++, your implementation will be, you don't have interface, you have multiple inheritance. Java doesn't have multiple inheritance, Smalltalk doesn't have multiple inheritance. So the features of your language influence how you actually implement the design patterns. But one thing you'll see is the common core structure, your set of objects and how they work together are very, very similar. Okay. So here's the outline of how we're going to go through. I'm going to start off and show you a few simple patterns just to get the main understanding. And then we'll get into some other patterns, and including one called null object, which is not in the design patterns book, but the authors have claimed is a design patterns that they would probably add if they rewrote the book. And then we'll look at, for example, when you're building objects, you don't always just do a constructor method. Sometimes you have to plug together a bunch of objects when you build a new instance of this, because it contains many other objects. So there's the creational patterns, such as abstract factory, builder, factory method, prototype, and singleton. So we'll talk about some of those. And then I'll get into some of the, like the memento and command and adapter and state. And then finally we'll get, these are the two hardest pattern badges to earn. Usually when we're teaching the course, we dedicate a lot of time and really force people to build an interpreter and a visitor. You won't have a chance to do that, but I'll give you the big picture and take you through some implementation details so you understand it. And then we'll finish off with these patterns, and then we've completed all 23 plus an extra one or two there. And then I'll definitely point you to where to find more information.